webinar on tips for voters and the new election laws that are impacting 2022. The laws actually came about in 2021. My name is Grace Shemaine, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Texas, and I will be the host on today's webinar. The League is nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We never support or oppose political parties or political candidates. Our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. I love our mission. We encourage you, while you're listening to the webinar, to submit questions by using the Q&A button on your screens. We expect there will be lots of questions, and what we hope to do is consolidate some of those questions so that we can provide answers at the end of the webinar as we have time. If not, we will hopefully be able to provide you with answers in a document that we could share with you afterwards. I believe we have the chat turned off, but I do see mine has some chat in it. So the goal is to have the chat off. We have a lot of people here today, and so I think it would be best if we have the chat off. So if you have those questions, you want to do it through the Q&A. All right. So first up, we have Gloria Leal, who is from the state LULAC. She is on the board of, my understanding is she's on the board of directors for Texas LULAC. No, she's not. Oops. I would like Gloria Leal to go ahead and introduce herself. She is a wonderful representative from LULAC. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Gloria Leal. I'm an attorney and government affairs consultant in Austin, Texas. I'm here as representing state LULAC as their state redistricting chair committee. So I want to thank y'all, the League of Women Voters, for the opportunity to talk to you today. LULAC is the oldest, largest Hispanic advocacy organization in the state. And like the League, we are a nonpartisan advocacy group, and we're proud to be a sponsor today. Today's speakers will update you and provide you information on new election laws passed during the legislative sessions. There's a couple of issues that you've heard about lately, but one of them that is important to LULAC is that some of our citizens, now naturalized as citizens, have received notices that they're not eligible to vote. We urge you to update your registration and contact us, the League, and they will provide you information to take care of this issue before election day, okay? The other issue is that apparently a good number, 40% or 50% of mail-in ballots in some of our major metropolitan areas have been rejected or being classified disqualified because of changes in the law. The speakers will update on you that, but more importantly, they will update you and inform you on how to correct these registration mail-in ballot applications so you are eligible to vote and exercise your vote on election day. Again, this is not a partisan or an Hispanic issue. We urge the citizens of Texas to exercise your right to vote, track the status of your application, or contact your elections official or League or LULAC if you have a question. Your voice is your vote. Su voto es su voz. Gracias, and thank you very much on behalf of State LULAC.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Josh Houston is here from Texas Impact, and he is going to be working through some of these slides. Josh, could you give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm Joshua Houston. I'm the Advocacy Director at Texas Impact. I am an attorney and a registered lobbyist. Texas Impact is the membership organization for mainline Protestants, Jews, and Muslims throughout the state. In fact, those denominations and some congregations in some cases are members of Texas Impact. They appoint our board, and we take positions on issues consistent with all of those member denominations. So if you are a mainline Protestant, Jew, or a Muslim and did not know you had a lobbyist before today, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. All right. And then I want to let you know to please stay until the end because we have Christina Das from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, who is going to provide some information at the end about volunteering as an election protection volunteer. Christina, would you just give a short welcome?
Absolutely. Thank you, Grace. Good to see everyone here today. My name is Christina Das. I am an attorney and our Texas lead for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. We are going to have nonpartisan election protection efforts throughout East Texas and in coalition with partners across the state. And we will train volunteers from A to Z, no experience needed, and looking forward to educating and empowering voters with any of your questions. And we'll be on the ground all year round for elections as well as remote.
Thank you so much. All your organizations do such a great job, and I really appreciate that you're here. So up on the slide here is the 2022 primary election key dates that we have for you. Of course, we have Vote 411 that has the League's voters guide that will be up for the primary election on January 26th. And then the legal lwvtexas.org has a lot of voter information and how to help voters. So please go there and use our resources. So we're going to talk about the new election laws, and that is in no way, shape, or form to say that you shouldn't be registering voters using as a volunteer deputy registrar. So don't think this is that we don't want you to do something. This is just talking about the new voter registration laws. So now you are able to update. If you are already registered to vote, you are able to update your voter registration online. If you moved or changed your name, you could update your voter registration at texas.gov or votetexas.gov. So in order to log in, which is where you log in order to update your voter registration, you have to have a driver's license. You put your driver's license number there. This little lady, her driver's license number is right there. You also have to provide your DPS audit number. This right here, these teeny tiny numbers at the bottom of your driver's license is your audit number.
Oh.
So you have to use readers, or you have to use a magnifying glass to get it out there and write in the correct audit number. You also have to provide a voter unique identifier number, which is also called a VUID. I just received my voter registration form in the mail. On my voter registration form is the VUID. Many people don't keep that voter registration form, so I'm going to show you some other ways of how to find it. Okay. See, it's here on the voter on this voter registration card, and that right there is your VUID number. You could also find it by going to votetexas.gov, click on Am I Registered? Am I Registered will provide you with access to where you could input your information and find your VUID number, and also look and see your name and your address where you're currently registered. The other way you could get your VUID number is by calling your county voter registrar. Josh, do you have anything else to add about this particular subject?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, we're just going to work together on this. I just want to say, for new college students, these laws are impacting them, especially with vote by mail. So what we're encouraging students to do, if they're living away from home, that is safest and easiest to register to vote at your college residence address. And there are specific reasons for this, and it's changes to the election law having to do with residence. It's a bit complicated, and that's why we're just saying it's safest and easiest to register or vote at your college. If you want to drive home, you can. But until I really learn about the impact of this new law, this is what we're encouraging students to do. Does that make sense to you, Joshua?
Oh, it does indeed. We can get into the nuts and bolts of residence and domicile if you want, but for right now, that is the best advice. Is that, I mean, if you are already registered at your parent's address, that should be fine. You can probably even vote by mail. But if you are a college student, or if you're helping college students and they are registering for the very first time, do it where you live currently in your school year. And we know it's not ideal. We know you're going to have to change, apartments. If you were like me in college, you're changing your place every year, and you're going to have to update it every year. Know that.
Yeah, and
that's
they
just
may
the
be
best
able to
advice we
update
have.
online now. So,
Yes, that's the good news.
or
Yeah.
with your local friendly volunteer deputy registrar. And this, Josh, what number are we on? Is this one that you were going to go over?
It's one that's fairly complicated. So in theory, this is Senate Bill 1111 was one that really, it affected the college students, and it also affected anybody who was mobile, people like retirees and RVs, oil field workers, but it really hammers those who are experiencing homelessness to the extent they were able to vote already. In theory, they still can. In reality, it's extremely onerous towards it's impossible, dang near impossible. It's really bureaucratic, Grace. I don't know how much time you want to give it.
I would just,
You want me to walk through the bureaucratic part and where maybe some nonprofits can help, or?
well, let me just say at first, what should they put in the space where they are on the registration form for where they live? What is their residence address supposed to be?
If you don't have a residence, you can't have an address. A lot of times, people experiencing homelessness will find a nonprofit or a church, which is a subset of nonprofit, just our membership, that is offering PO boxes for mail services.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if it has a PO box, it's quite possible. We don't know how it's going to be implemented. It's probably going to vary by county, and it's certainly open to overzealous enforcement by an overzealous voter registrar. But it might get flagged if it's a commercial PO box. Right. So to the extent you're a church or a nonprofit, it might be helpful. And this is I want to stress that word, if you use the church's address, physical address. But we don't know. We really don't know how that's going to be enforced. And the real problem for those experiencing homelessness is not that it's not that you have the PO box and then you get popped. It's that you have the PO box and that causes a confirmation notice to be sent. And the process of filling out the confirmation notice gets super onerous, and it will trip up a lot of folks who are experiencing homelessness, because you need to have access to a printer. You need to have access to a notary. You need to know how to even do a sworn affidavit, which requires a bit of legal knowledge. There's so many hoops that what's effectively going to happen is without help from the nonprofit and faith-based sectors that do these mail services, the homeless population will get flagged. The confirmation notice will get sent. They'll never be able to respond to it, and they'll get their registration canceled.
Right. So can they put in, I live at the corner of one street and another street?
Well, that is what the sworn affidavit is. You're attesting to under oath with a sworn affidavit. Of course, to fill out an affidavit, you need to have access to a word processor. You need to be able to print it. You need to be able to get to a notary. You need to have ID for the notary. And then you have to, be able to mail it. And those are all the steps along the way that, so that's great. In reality, I don't know how they'll ever comply.
So our recommendation is if there is an address for a residence, to use an address in the residence form. And in the mailing address, you can use a PO box, and we hope that that doesn't flag voters without a residence. So that's just a simple suggestion, but it does seem that this new law is going to trip up many of our voters without a residence. Let's move to the
Yeah,
next.
this might
Yeah.
be a real quick, good time to note that everything I'm being called in to talk about is in court in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, yeah.
Is the subject of litigation, every single one of these. And this particular court case is LULAC versus Elfont.
Mhm.
That is the case pending. I should note that stay tuned. The date is January 18th at noon. I literally recorded a presentation and hours later had the Secretary of State make a release that changed my presentation. I say that to say that with a half dozen lawsuits going on, there are going to be changes to the election law throughout 2022 and into the foreseeable future. The key message is keep calm and vote on. We're going to have to adapt and overcome, and we will. And I should note that as an attorney, this is all general education about the issue. If you have a specific issues that affecting you personally, our advice is to consult legal counsel. That's not us just covering our rear ends, but the thing you're doing may be different from what we're talking about today, and only a legal professional is going to be able to know that for sure.
Yeah.
Grace, do you have the election protection hotline, or we cover that?
We're going to get to the, we're going to provide the election
Okay.
protection hotline at the end, and also how folks can be trained to become an election protection volunteer to help people and voters in their communities. So we'll provide that at the end. I did want to say that that's why we call this tips on the new election law instead of legal advice. So things change. We'll provide you with updates in our emails, and I really appreciate each one of y'all paying attention to those. Early voting. If you're from a small county, voters have an opportunity for the voting polling places are open at more hours. So that is one good thing for small counties in Texas. You could learn more about it on our website. All right. This is one of the issues that we've been working on closely and carefully because it is tripping up many voters. So who qualifies is really not tripping up many voters. There is a new person who can qualify, and that is a voter expecting to give birth within 3 weeks before or after Election Day. So I don't know how many voters that will impact. But if it does, you're welcome to apply to vote by mail for that specific election. One note with the new election law is that counties may not provide applications to organizations. They can and must have a link to vote by mail on their website. And they need to, if you're from across the state, go to your county website and make sure that application is the new application. And we'll go over that application in just a second. But what they can't do is they can't offer the vote by mail application when they're registering voters. They can't suggest that voters vote by mail. But you know who can? You can. Organizations can. Parties can. So don't expect, your county to provide this information to you, but do expect that your organization, your church, your nonprofit can share the vote by mail applications with voters, perhaps at voter registration drives. So just to let you know that. The Secretary of State does offer some print vote by mail applications, but counties are not allowed to print any vote by mail application. So you can get a copy of one and print it for your own organization. All right, so we're going to go over a little bit of the new application to vote by mail, also known as the ABBM. So you must request a vote by mail application from your county election office. Each person who is a voter must request it. So if a wife calls, then she can't request it for another person. So you got to get that person on the phone so that they could request it. The new part of the application that is tripping people up is the voter ID number. So the number that is required, it's not a copy, but just the number of your Texas driver's license, a personal ID number, the election identification certificate, or if you don't have one of those, if you do not have one of those, then you can use your Social Security number. What some organizations are doing is suggesting that you put in your Texas driver's license number, your personal ID number, and the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. Because the important part of the bill is not only are they asking this for your application to vote by mail, but it also must be a similar number that is somehow connected to your voter registration. So your voter registration must have an ID number. Your application to vote by mail or your ABBM must have a voter registration number, and your ballot to vote by mail must have that same registration number. So I just wanted to be really clear on that. This is a part of section 1 of the application to vote by mail. I'm going to go here. So there are 2 new so the voters who vote by mail, this is just repeating that it has to be the same voter ID number on these 3 sections that relates back to the voter register, to you as a voter registration, to your voter registration. There is a new cure process. So when you're helping somebody or when you were actually filling out the application to vote by mail, please provide your contact information. And so your contact information is on your application to vote by mail and also on your vote by mail carrier ballot envelope. So provide that contact information, because if there is an issue, like the numbers don't match up or something, the counties may contact you so that you can fix whatever the issue is with your application or your ballot. So provide as much information as you can. On that application to vote by mail, it has a VUID number. If you don't throw away your voter registration card, you could put that VUID number on there, and that will help them find you also. So whatever ways we could do to help would be great. Let me see if I have, So there is a new, and this just went up on the Texas, votetexas.gov website, and it is a vote by mail tracker or a ballot tracker. So you can watch your application to vote by mail and your ballot as it goes through the process. And you should be able to update any problems that are happening with your vote, with your application to vote by mail. So go to votetexas.gov and you should be able to go to Am I Registered? That little link right there, and you should be able to go to your vote by mail tracker. We'll have more information sent out in the email, but this is a new process. And since I don't vote by mail, I can't really take you through the entire vote by mail tracker, but please let me know how it goes. And it's part of the cure process. The cure process is where the county may contact you if you need to fix an error with your application or your ballot. So what is the main goal with all this? Turn your vote by mail application in early. Turn your ballot in early. If there's an issue and there's time for them to fix it, then they should be able to help. You should be given some guidance on how to correct any errors in the application or ballot. So if you see here on the right-hand side under voter information, provide as much voter information as you can so that they can get a hold of you. Did we lose Joshua? Josh, are you there?
Yeah, I think I'm back. I had
Okay.
a technical snafu, but it should be corrected now.
Is there anything you would like to add to what I was trying to share? Just simplify, just provide as much information as you can on the vote by mail application.
Yeah, no, I thought what you did was great. I'll just amplify to make sure everybody's super crystal clear that there are 3 different forms we're talking about where this number must agree across all 3 forms. There's your original voter application, which if you're like me, you filled it out in 2008 and have no clue what you put because it's not abundantly clear on that old form that it's a priority order and not an either or. And I'll say more about that. Then there's your application to vote by mail. So again, this really only affects you if you're voting by mail. But the election administrators are being pretty tight with these applications because, and this isn't to criticize them, they know that they would rather fix it on the front end, and you still have preserved your ability to vote if they reject your application and do it by mail because you can still go in person. By the time that ballot gets back on the carrier envelope with a bad number, there's a much bigger problem. It's still curable, but it's a harder problem to solve than if they try to fix it on the front end, which is part of why we're seeing what we're seeing, we think. So just to reiterate, if you cannot remember, and Grace, I cut out there for a bit, so forgive me if I either repeat or if you may have had other great advice. Our best thought was to be sure, your county voter registrar, who is also your county tax assessor, that is where your original voter registration document resides. So it might be worthwhile to give them a call if you can't remember what you put down and just say, hey, which number did I put down, and see if you can fix it that way. Find out on the front end before you go to apply to vote by mail, since it's January 18th and the March 1st primary is looming.
Yeah. I also suggested putting in your driver's license number or personal ID number and the last 4 digits of your social security number, just in case. Could be.
I'm not gonna opine on that one because I don't want to get into what could potentially scare somebody, and
I
you
don't know.
could be committing fraud. You might be admitting to fraud, but I think the likelihood of that's pretty low.
So thank you. So the best
I
thing,
believe Gloria wants to add something.
I just wanted to note that according to the Secretary of State, for the March 1 primary election, the last day your application by mail ballot has to be received by your voting clerk by Friday 18, 2020.
yeah, thank you.
So
Thank
the
you so much.
corrections and everything need to be sent in by that date.
Is
Right.
that February, Gloria?
February.
Yes, February 18, according to the Secretary of State.
Right.
And even that is pushing
That's pushing
what
it.
the Postal Service says is doable for them. That's the legal deadlines don't always take into account the Postal Service realities and logistics.
That's right. So what I would
Do it early.
suggest for everybody to do is send in your application now if there's a problem so you could fix it. Send in your ballot as soon as you get it, so that if there's an issue, you may be able to fix the issue. So just to let you know, I don't want to stop anybody from voting by mail because it's so important for our voters who are older than 65, and for our voters who have a disability or voters who are out of the county for whatever reason on election day, during the election. I do want to talk about the poll watcher changes. So there is some good news, is that they are required to take training. I have not seen that training. It's not up on the votetexas.gov or available, as far as I could tell, on the Secretary of State's website yet. But poll watchers do have to take training now. So that is good. They also have to sign this oath that they swear that I will not disrupt the voting process or harass voters in the discharge of my duties. So that is a good thing. The bad thing is that they have fewer restrictions on their movement and their observation of the voters and their ability to get them out if they are misbehaving at the polling place. So remember to call election protection if you have any issues with poll watchers or while you're voting, and we'll provide that information to you at the end. Okay. Josh, I highlighted the part that I wanted you to be sure to emphasize with this, but this is about assisting voters. And I thought maybe you could help me with this one.
Yep, that is the operative part of the oath that they've changed. So let's back up just a little bit and say that the Voting Rights Act, Federal Voting Rights Act, provides a voter a right to have the assister of the voter's choosing. What Senate Bill 1 did is it changed two things. It changed many things, but two things we're going to talk about and focus on. There's a form the assister has to fill out, and I want to chat about the form a little bit. And then there's the oath that has been changed. And there are a couple of things we should talk about with that. What's so scary about forms? Well, forms precede investigations. Let's be real. The name and address of the assister is on it. The relationship to the voter is on it. And if we are honest about our history as a nation, retaliations happen. The congressional record of the Voting Rights Act is replete with stories from South Texas of voters talking about the economic repercussions they faced in the community for even showing up to vote back in the day. So I bring this up to say, if your family is of mixed citizenship status, this could be highly intimidating for you. And you could cause you to rationally think, is voting really worth the risk of a family member's deportation? Especially given the Sanctuary Cities Bill, Senate Bill 4, that was passed several sessions ago. Let's look at the oath part right here, since it's highlighted. This is exactly the part we need to talk about. The previous oath under the old law allowed a voter to ask the assister questions. So let's get real concrete with this. Let's pretend that a grandmother takes her granddaughter to the polls with her to help her read the ballot, and the grandmother, because they all live together, ask, now who was that nice young woman running for judge that we talked to last week? She came by the house last week. What was her name? Under the old law, the granddaughter could answer that question. Under this part you see highlighted right here, we read that to mean it's illegal to answer that question. That the assister can only read the ballot, direct the voter to read the ballot, mark the ballot, or direct the voter to mark the ballot. And remember, there are poll watchers that are going to be lurking around. And whenever there's a person assisting, that tends to make that gives the poll, that makes the poll watchers come over and watch even more closely. And these are partisan poll watchers who are there they're likely to really enforce this. And again, report you for perjury on your oath. And so, even if you're not prosecuted, again, remember the investigation is what's often scary for families that have, citizens and people of mixed citizenship status within the extended family. I think the fundamental thing one of the things that's deeply concerning is that there were already plenty of criminal statutes on the books that made unsavory behavior by an assister super illegal. So that these changes were not necessary. It was already illegal to mark another person's ballot without specific direction from the voter. It was already illegal to influence the independent exercise of the vote of another. And Senate Bill 1 made it illegal to cause the ballot not to reflect into the voter. So these changes to the form and the oath were really not necessary, and we believe have quite an intimidating effect on anybody who is disabled or needs language assistance.
All right.
I wish I had some good advice for those families. It's really a personal decision for each family, knowing what you know about your family and that I don't know about your family. So I'm not really sure what legal advice we could give to help out with this.
Right.
Maybe
But
Grace has some.
I would at least follow the oath and just do what it says on there, because that's the form you're signing if you are assisting a person. And I believe that oath is also on the vote by mail ballot, that you also have to sign the oath and mark that you didn't receive any compensation. The assisters, just as before, they can't be an employer or a union person or something like that. So just make sure you read this, because you are signing an oath. There is another section about people, and this happens in nursing homes, this happens in churches, is where there's a person who is driving a bus load of folks who are going to curbside vote because they qualify to curbside vote. If there are 7 people in the car who are going to curbside vote, then the new law says that that driver must sign a form which is shared with the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State may share it with the Attorney General. So it's just something to be aware of. You could, especially for those churches or organizations that help voters who have disabilities vote in person. So,
and Grace, this one came up for us, and in fact, just in the last couple of days, where one of our members said, well, we can't drive people to the polls anymore. And I want to be real clear, that is not what this provision says. You can absolutely drive people to the polls. You can absolutely bus people to the polls. This is limited to voting curbside. In other words, this is for people who are disabled, where the election judges have to come outside with the little mobile curbside voting thing. If you're just driving people to the polls, you all get off the bus, you all walk in and vote as normal. This doesn't apply to you.
Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it tripped me up. I mean, I'll just confess that it tripped a lot of lawyers up on earlier.
It's just for curbside voting people and people
limited to curbside voting is how we are reading it.
Yeah, and people who curbside vote also, they're very limited in who they can be. So, but that hasn't changed. This is the oath. Again, it's in Spanish and English, and it is on your vote by mail ballot, and also will be what you sign for if you assist somebody at the polls, directly at the polls in person. So I was just providing you with that. And then I was going to have, and we're going to send out some resources for you to use from the league, things you could print up to hand out, especially about vote by mail or voter registration. And Christina Das with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund is going to go over volunteering as an election protection person. Go over that. And then while we're doing that, we're going to collect the questions that people have and provide a time to answer some of those questions. Christina, you want to go over this real quick, and then we'll do the questions.
Yes, absolutely. So for those that didn't get to hear from me in the beginning, I am an attorney and our Texas team lead for the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. And within that, I work in the Thurgood Marshall Institute, and we have a year-round process to monitor elections, monitor policy and legislation, and push for change from the bottom up, creating a process for more free and fair elections where all eligible voters are able to participate and to really also amplify the voices that have been marginalized in political participation. Our election protection efforts are centered on ensuring that, that there's a nonpartisan coalition. So our work ranges from local, state to national, and we have been active in Texas since 2020, since the monumental presidential election. And then last year, we were also involved in municipal elections in Harris County. Our work this year is going to surround all areas of East Texas, east of Houston and Harris County. We are going to focus on more rural and suburban populations. And election protection really is on the ground advocacy, and it's on the ground monitoring. You all will be our eyes and ears, and you will be monitoring the polls from the requisite distance away from the polls. You can stay in your car, you can rove, you can be on your foot, and you'll make sure that poll sites are in compliance with the VRA as well as state laws. And we're going to train you on all of that. You're going to make sure there's proper accessible parking, that polling places are opening on time. And then you'll be able to communicate with us in our boiler room, and so that we can make sure that if there is an issue, that's escalated to the election administrator's office, and if need be, to the Secretary of State's office. This work is all nonpartisan. Anyone can help. You can be 18, you can be 85. Some of our best volunteers are in the senior community, and they really take multiple shifts a day, but it is going to take all of us. It's going to take every Texan and any volunteer that we need and that we can get to really make sure we have eyes and ears on the ground. And this work is going to help us compile a legislative record and possibly a legal record for future actions to enforce any relevant laws and to make sure that all voters are eligible to vote. And so, as Grace said, this is the link to volunteer with us. You can sign up. You can email me at cdas@nwacpldf.org to get involved. And there's also a bit.ly, which is bit.ly/TX volunteers. So you can get involved. But again, this is your democracy, so you have to make it, protect it, pass it on. And we're going to be active throughout the early voting period from February 14th to March 1st, Election Day, and then again in November. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to we're going to go through the last couple of slides, and I'm going to turn it off, and we're going to open up to questions, which Dorothy Marchand is going to lead. Here's some resources. We'll be sending this information out to you with the slides or the YouTube, lwvtx.org, vote411.org, election protection. If there is somebody who is having a problem with their vote by mail application or their voter registration using these new tools that we have available to us, please contact election protection. We need to know. There are lawyers who will respond and help and guide you through the process if you have a problem. It's not just for during early voting or election day, but also right now. So let us know if you have a problem by contacting election protection right there. And of course, you could let the Secretary of State know too. And there's his number, and there's votetexas.gov. So, and here's the last slide, which is all about Vote 411. If you have any, you want to see what's on your ballot, January 26th, we will have it up and available for the Texas primaries. There are a lot of candidates. So I'm going to stop my share right now. Boop. And then Dorothy Marchand, are you available?
Yes.
And it
Can you
looks
hear
like
me?
there was lots of questions in the Q&A. So
Yes, and we were
hopefully you're able
trying
to
to answer
consolidate
them.
some.
Yeah, we were trying to answer a bunch of them, via typing. But so there were quite a lot of questions about curbside voting. And what are the laws regarding driving people to the polls who will be voting curbside? What has changed and who is eligible?
Joshua, you want to take that, or you want? What?
Could you, I'm sorry, I was actually responding to some of these in the Q&A. If you could ask me it one more time, I'd be happy to take it.
Sure. There were quite a few questions regarding curbside in terms of what has changed, is in terms of eligibility. What do you have to, what is the eligibility requirement to vote curbside? And also a lot of questions about drivers who bring people curbside, how many they can bring at a time, the restriction on 7 or more having to sign an oath. If you bring 6 3 times a day, do you not have to sign an oath? So just a lot of questions regarding that.
Yeah, let's walk through that one by one because those are all different questions. The eligibility, I do not have it in front of me. My understanding is that it's for those with disabilities only. That what usually happens. I mean, I was an election judge and it never happened. But I remember that if somebody came in requesting that this was the little thing you took out there to them, and I don't know that we checked the disability thing all that strictly. Grace, you might know better than me, exactly what the eligibility is. I'd have to look at the code to be able to say for
It's
sure.
similar. My understanding is if you're unable to go into the polling place because it might impact your health, you are not able to get there, then yes, Christina. Did you
Yeah, I
have?
just wanted to
hand up?
clarify that those are correct, but there's no, listed range of disabilities. It's if you're physically unable to enter the polling place without personal assistance or likelihood of injuring your health. That could
That's
be a
correct.
mobility issue. It could be issue with mobility in your age. It could be a other impending health situation that you're facing. There is no requirement to have a pre-existing disability that you have documentation for, such that you have a handicap parking situation. It's just if you're physically unable to enter without assistance and you would endanger your health.
Thank you
Okay,
for
so it's the same
clarifying. I knew there
definition
was
as voting by
specific
mail,
wording
then.
about that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I
I didn't know that it's the same definition as voting by mail.
Right,
And I wasn't sure about that. So that's good. to know.
yeah. Dorothy, the second part, I think we went over, and maybe they asked this before, is the form that you fill out is only for if you're driving 7 or more people who are in your van or bus, that you would have to fill out the form for the Secretary of State's office. Is that correct, Joshua?
Yeah, 7 or more. The question is, could you subterfuge it a little bit by bringing 6 at a time? This is not the first time I've been asked it, and unfortunately, I simply do not know. I don't know. It's just a form. It's not a prohibition. If you're worried about the form, give it a try. I don't know that there's any. It's not a crime to do 6 at a time, as far as I know.
No, yeah.
Do it and see what happens.
We don't know. It would be the answer.
But we don't know. We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know how the law will be used during the election. So we're going to have to play it by ear. And that's why it's so important for us to hear back to election protection if there is an issue, so that we know what parts of this law is impacting voters and who it is impacting. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Okay, there were other questions just to get some clarification on who can hand out bulk ballot by mail applications. And so the understanding is that the county election officers cannot hand those out in bulk. But
they can't hand them out individually unless
if you represent a
voters.
church, can you go pick out a package of these ballot by mail applications from the county, or do you have to print them out?
So the
to
county
do this type
is,
of volunteer work?
This is when I know for sure. We do a program on this, and the county is unlikely to give you more than one because they have a prohibition on using. Basically, they can't pay any money, and even the cost of the cent it costs to make a copy is the expenditure of public funds, and so they can't pay a third party to do this for them. It's prohibited. They'd be committing a felony. So what you can do, and what we are advising our membership to do, is get one. You can get them you're entitled to one. You can get them from the Secretary of State's office too. And you're going to have to use your church's copier or just your private copier. But then there is absolutely no prohibition on private entities and private citizens or private entities from distributing these applications. We fought real hard legislatively to make that true.
Yeah, and so what is happening now is some people are getting an application to vote by mail because they received it from the Democratic Party or from the Republican Party. Parties are not, this does not impact them. So they have a list who normally votes by mail, who votes Republican or votes Democratic, and they often will send out these applications to vote by mail. So be very careful when you fill it out. But that is coming from your party and not from your county. That has been brought up to me. So just to let you know that if you do receive one, it is from the party, more than likely, organization. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Okay, there were a couple of questions about election protection and versus being a poll worker. Basically saying that counties need poll workers. Is it better to devote one's time to being a poll worker or an election protection? And can you do both?
So there I just want to go real quick and then I'll get it over to Christina, is that there are many ways to help voters during elections. Being a volunteer deputy registrar, ensuring that your congregation or your organization or your group, your friends and family know about the election and that they are allowed to vote in the Texas primaries and in the election if they're eligible and they're registered. But also you can be help on during early voting and during election day by being a poll worker. And that is fantastic. Contact your county and you can, or your party, and they will help you become a poll worker. So that is a fantastic way to help too. Another way to help is to be, some people like to be poll watchers. So you are a poll watcher representing your candidate. Candidates are the one who are assigned poll watchers. And then another fantastic way is to become an election protection volunteer, helping voters who have any issues at the polls and watching those polling places. Christina, take it away.
That was great. I just like to give that clear distinction, right? We're very intentional in the language we use with the league, as well as the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Lawyers Committee. We are nonpartisan election protection monitors and volunteers. Nobody's paid. We help everybody vote. We don't care who you vote for. We just want to help you vote. And that's our obligation. That's our, ethos and our policy. We are not partisan. We won't be going into the polling place. We're not with a certain party. So it's very important to not confuse what we do with being a poll worker or a poll watcher. I agree with Grace. All are very important. I would encourage people to sign up and be poll workers if you can. Check out Power to the Polls and, sign up. There's always a need, but definitely with such large amounts of polling places and such new laws that we're navigating, as Josh and Grace are telling you, it's very important to have nonpartisan election protection monitors in place. And we rove, ideally you'll be driving from one location to the other over a 3-hour shift. You'll be able to cover 5 locations and kind of just take those observations from your car. So very different roles, all crucial to making democracy work.
Thank you. Dorothy?
Who is eligible to receive assistance when they're voting, or where is that listed and shown?
Josh, do you have some information on that?
If assistance being in the polls, in the polling location, it's anybody who has anybody with a disability or a language barrier. And I might be the least qualified. The NAACP and LULAC do a lot more work on voter assistance than we do.
LULAC, Gloria, do you have any information for voters, especially voters who may need translation assistance at the polls?
Well, what LULAC is encouraging is the education of our voters so that they are familiar with the new requirements, so that they do not run into the issue of being confronted by a poll watcher on exceeding the requirements or the limitations in the language. We're trying to do as much as we can education in Spanish-speaking media and through our membership to make sure that they're aware of the limitations. But at this point, we are also concerned about whether or not that limitation is going to maybe intimidate or discourage some voters. So to the extent that we can continue to educate on the requirements, that will give people maybe a little bit more or less fear or more confidence in their right to vote. So thank you very much.
Christina, do you have anything to add about translations or people who need assistance at the polling place?
Sure. So you do have, under federal law, the right to receive assistance to vote if you're unable to vote unaided due to blindness, disability, inability to read English, so language assistance, and you can choose who assists you as long as they're not your employer or union representative. Again, I want to emphasize what Josh said. These are all just tips, not legal advice, and these laws are subject to change. Texas has active litigation going on right now and several state laws that might change this, but you absolutely have a right to assistance, especially if you have a differing ability, and there should be accessibility polling machines and accessible entrances at the polling place. Every polling place has your typical polling booth, as well as an accessible one with larger font sizes, assistance for those that have a difference in hearing abilities, as well as reading abilities and might need larger sizes or maybe Braille or things like that.
So you can,
Gloria, we are also concerned that enforcement may be vigorous or more vigorous in certain locations where there tends to be more of a majority or concentration of Hispanic voters. I certainly encountered that in South Texas a couple of years ago. So we are cautioning our voters that in fact, they maybe need to be more vigilant at certain sites.
right.
And we do need nonpartisan or partisan poll watchers to ensure that these privileges are not being infringed on.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know in election protection that we are aware of certain polling locations that we are really truly trying to provide an election protection volunteer at, because we want to monitor those, because those may have a history of having a problem, or because they're serving a population that we're concerned about. So be sure when you volunteer as an election protection worker, know that you may be assigned to a place not in your neighborhood, but maybe in a neighborhood that needs more eyes to protect the voters of Texas. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Where can election workers and voters find official materials so that we can learn what the poll watchers can and cannot do under the new laws or rules?
Well, wouldn't it be nice if the Secretary of State had put up the new poll watcher training? Unfortunately, the training that is up that I've found so far is from 2019. I know they're working desperately hard at the Secretary of State's office to update the poll watcher training because that training is now required to be certified. They need to be certified. So they will have to take that training or be trained by their county election officials before they're able to serve as a poll watcher. That is my understanding. And I haven't been able to find it. So if somebody else finds it first, send it on to me. And we will share that with you. It'll be on our website. lwvtexas.org has a section called How to Help Voters. And in there is who's at the polls, and it has information about poll watchers. And it has the old training, and we are hoping to get the new training up there really soon so people will understand what poll workers can and can't do and what their training is all about. Go ahead, Dorothy.
This is for Josh. May a voter requesting assistance bring his or her draft ballot where choices have been made and then ask the assister to help make the same marks on the ballot being voted?
Yes, that seems likely, because you can take pen and paper into the polling location with you, and the assister oath says at the direction of the voter. So that would be the direction of the voter, directing the assister on how to fill it out. The way I heard the question that asked.
So
I'm sorry.
So we only have 2 more minutes. So I just wanted to be aware, oftentimes people will bring in the voter's guide, or will use the vote411.org to review the candidates, make their choices, and have a list with them. And they will often take that list from the voter's guide to the polling place, and that is totally allowed.
So that's new advice. Thank you for that question, because I wasn't sure how to advise on the voter assistance part with forms and oaths. I wasn't sure how to advise those families. Well,
they could bring it in.
If Abuela wants to ask her granddaughter, hey, who was that nice young woman who came by the house for judge? Just make sure you fill out that ballot. Do it all ahead of time at home.
Yeah.
Don't do it in the polls, and then bring that paper with you to the polls.
And you could print out, if you have a printer, which it's hard to find a printer nowadays, but if you have a printer, then get a ballot. Fill out that ballot at home, where you could really take your time researching candidates. You could use the Vote 411 to compare candidates. but take a copy of that ballot. It's required by law to be up on your county election website. So check your county election website, find out what that ballot is, bring the ballot with you to when you go vote at the polls. And that would be really helpful to know exactly who you're going to vote for, what propositions or whatever before you get there. We only have 1 minute left, so I just wanted to let you know. I wanted to thank everyone for being here today. This is really important information. The laws that were passed in the last legislative session were huge, and it's a massive change in the election law. There's a lot of items that we need to share with our voters and our friends and family. We need to make sure we provide trusted election information, that we don't be alarmist, that we stay calm and go through the process. So we will share with you our resources in a follow-up email, and we will share this video on YouTube. So everybody stay calm. Let's work through the process. Let's give kudos for when, if the Secretary of State offers better website, because I know they're improving their website. They just haven't got it up to date for the election yet. So as that happens, we will share that information. Please go out, stay safe with COVID, stay safe when you're voting. Try to stay calm, use election protection, the League's Voters Guide, LULAC, LDF, NAACP, LDF, and all the other resources that you feel comfortable with. Use your county election website and give them a call if you have any questions. Stay safe, be a Texas voter. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.